Isabelle.
And I'm Ben.
Welcome to Conversations in Company, a podcast from the charity Suicide&Co, here to make the suicide loss a little less lonely.
We've both been on this journey for a few years.
I lost my cousin to suicide in 2017.
And I lost my brother to suicide in 2018.
We really hope that we and our guests can offer you some companionship wherever you are on this journey.
Hi, Isabelle.
Hi. How's it going?
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Very good.
Good. What have you been up to? Because this is a special episode. We haven't recorded for a while and we're sort of regrouping to do another episode. What's new?
I'm now 31 weeks pregnant. So,
wow.
Yeah. So just getting bigger and bigger by the day. Yeah. Which is just going through a load of we've just done a few moving around the flat, changing things up, and started doing parent and baby classes. And I'm sort of tempering my absolute terror about motherhood every single day. My partner is incredibly calm about it all, and I'm just like, ah!
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing how quickly it comes, because it doesn't feel very long ago that you were telling us about, finding out that you were pregnant and the early days of that. That's amazing how quickly it's gone.
That's amazing for you, because it feels like, honestly, the longest 8 months of my life.
Not very quick for you.
I'm like, this is dragged.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's amazing. We've seen the progression of this through the podcast, which is great.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. Glad things are going well.
Yeah. All safe and sound. So just I had to do a gestational diabetes test last week, which came back clear. And I was just between doing the test and getting the results, I was just eating Haribo, because I was I'm not going to be able to eat this anymore if they diagnose me with gestational diabetes. So I'm just going to get it all in now. Bring me the Tang Fastics.
Exactly. Oh dear. Okay. You've swerved that then? You're allowed.
Yeah, I'm
allowed
allowed
now.
to. Yeah, I mean, I've actually lost my appetite quite a lot, so it's not. It won't make that much of a difference. But I managed to swerve the no carbs.
No Tang Fastics for another few months. Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Well, like I said, we are back for a special episode.
Yeah.
And it is a very special episode because we have been honoured to be able to chat to the amazing Shirley Ballas, who is obviously well known for her talent and work on Strictly Come Dancing and her charisma, but she's also been an incredible advocate for suicide prevention and for Suicide&Co, the charity. She talks really openly about her story, and it is a genuine honour to sit on the podcast and be able to spend some time talking to you, Shirley. Thank you so much for coming on and giving us some of your time to have this conversation.
I feel like you deserve a round of applause, you come on stage.
No round of applause necessary. I'm very excited to be here today, so it's quite an honour to be able to talk about CALM and also Suicide&Co and anything that might help people out there.
Yeah. And how are you today, Shirley?
How am I? Fair and partly cloudy, my day. So
Good.
I've already been in the ice bath for 4 minutes, which was freezing, but rejuvenating, and just, life has its ups and downs all the time, but, fine. I'm snuggling my dog, so he's my therapy dog, actually. He is a therapy dog. And he always can tell when one needs a little snuggle, so he just hangs there, you see.
Oh, bless.
That's lovely.
So, Shirley, if you don't mind taking us back to the start of your sort of introduction to suicide and how it affected your life, would you mind sharing with people what you experienced and what led you to begin to advocate for suicide prevention and talk about mental health?
Well, my brother took his own life over 20 years ago. And I can still remember that day clearly today. Even in fact now, if somebody knocks on my door that's remotely a policeman, I can go back to the time. It triggers off a whole lot of memories. My mum and I were at home. It was this wonderful evening that we'd had the night before, where we'd gone to see my son perform in London in a concert. And that night my son had said, "Oh, mummy, please let me stay out. Let me stay out for the evening, stay with a friend." It was the first time I'd let Mark stay out. Anyway, the next morning at 6 o'clock, there was a knock on the front door, and we opened the front door. There was me and my mother behind me. And when I saw the police, you know, and your heart just sinks and you think, this isn't good. The look on their face, it wasn't good. And they just said, "Mrs. Rich." I moved aside and my mother moved forward. And then they gave her that just awful news. It was like being frozen in time. I can still see her face. She couldn't move. She couldn't speak. We were both in complete shock. It was a Friday. And, you know, we were down south. He was up north. It was just the most shocking thing that ever happened in our family unit, because my mum had spent 6 weeks being with him because he didn't feel great and he was up and down and he'd gotten depressed. And it was just that one night she came back to London to see her grandson in the church singing, and that's when it happened. And so, you know, there's always been that element of blame if I hadn't. I did ask him to come down, but he didn't want to, but he pushed me to send my mother, and she was not comfortable leaving him. And I pushed it, you know, "Come on, mum, come on. Just have a day off," because she'd been 24/7 taking care of him. But to be fair, no doctor, no one had shared anything about his feelings. My mother is very much keeps everything in her heart. She doesn't like to overshare. David wasn't sharing. I just thought he was, you know, we go through slumps in life, right? And my mum will say, "Oh, come on, pick yourself up, Shirley, dust yourself off, you'll be fine." And I thought it was just one of those, but unfortunately it wasn't. And there was many things attached to that and things that I found out later that were absolutely horrendous from a social care perspective of people taking care. Nobody seemed to A, talk about it, B, want to share any experiences about it. And then of course he lost his life. He took his own life at home in our house. And yeah, it was just an all in all drastically dreadful experience. And we carried that for many, many years, many, many years. And when I turned 50 and I had a big party, I was living in the United States at the time, my son said, "Okay, let's get a little bit more into some charity work, and all gifts from your party, we can raise funds." And we raised over $60,000 for a charity in California for suicide. And then of course in 2017 I got the job on Strictly. 2018 I didn't think I was going to renew the contract because of newspapers and trolling and one thing and another. And it was then that my son said, "Okay, Nanny, okay, Mum, why don't you use your job as a platform and get involved in a lot more charity work?" Think of it not so much about the bad that comes with it, the trolling, newspaper articles that were coming up about things that weren't true, my mother's life exposed in the newspaper, my brother's life exposed in the newspaper. And they chose back to then not to say he'd taken his own life, but the real specifics of it, of how he'd done it. So it was just really sad for all of us, but terrible for my mother. So we decided in 2018, okay, that's what we'll do. We'll renew the contract, but not just think of it as a job, but really go into what platform do I have to talk about bullying through my own personal history in my life, to talk about suicide, for my brother, cancer, because my mum has cancer, so we joined that charity. So we use the platform for many different charities, but the two closest to my heart are CALM, Campaign Against Living Miserably. I've been an ambassador since 2022, and Suicide&Co, which I got involved with last year, which I think is a very, very important charity. In actual fact, I've had things going on in my life lately, and I did something for Suicide&Co yesterday, and I was able to talk, you know, about that with them, and they totally got it. And even with all the knowledge that I have, gave me a new perspectives on how to deal with these issues that I'm going through at the moment. And I just thought, yeah, this is it. This is people who've been left behind need somebody to talk to and a place to go to, you know, for the people left behind, bereavement. And that's why I joined Suicide&Co. And between the two charities, it's been remarkable what we've been able to do to help people who are wanting to take their own life, or families that have been left with trauma that have nowhere to go and no one to talk to. So it's amazing. I'm very excited to be a part of both charities.
That's great.
It's amazing to me listening to you talk, and thank you for sharing that so honestly with us, Shirley. It's really impressive that you can talk about something that must be really difficult, even now, so long afterwards. It must be really difficult to talk about and think about. So, when you're talking about, particularly with your presence and your the sort of stage that you're always on, and the criticism and the newspaper articles and all of that you received, I think it's a really brave step for you to have taken to then almost talk about it more as a result of that potentially negative attention. What was the thought process like at the time when you made that decision of actually, no, I'm going to sign that contract, and I'm going to use this as a way of trying to help people that were in your brother's situation and in your family's situation? That must have been a really confusing time for you. What was that decision like?
Well, I think my son's helped me greatly with that, because I live with many different hats all the time, but I live with the heartache of my brother on a daily basis. And he was just the one who wanted to push me a little bit more into doing more charity work. And his idea was, you are going to be helping so many people. And let me tell you, I had so many people in my life that have taken their own life close to me, or threatened to take their own life, or all various different things. But it also helps me. I don't want to sound selfish in any way, but actually helping other people, I feel like I'm doing something. If somebody would have given me that kind of care, due care and attention for my brother, I honestly think my brother would be sitting opposite me now and we'd be doing the work together. And I didn't get that kind of help. There was no help for me and my mother. No doctors, they just prescribed him pills. Nobody seemed interested in listening. When he was in his darkest times, wanted to go to the hospital, we tried to get him sectioned, and we pulled up to the hospital and he saw a friend standing, just bad timing. He saw a friend of his that was stood there, and out of embarrassment, he didn't want to appear weak. He didn't want people to look down on him, because he was quite a tough guy on the housing estate. He kept our housing estate super clean from drugs and all things that were roaming around at the time. Really good guy. And we had to turn the car around. Now, had that person have not been stood on that step and we'd have gotten sectioned, maybe we'd have got a bit more help. But we reached out to the doctors. They didn't seem to know anything except, you're depressed, take these depression medicine. And after he died, and I read what it said on the label, may accelerate the feelings of suicide. Who gives people pills like that? So it's all those types of things that no matter what medication people are given, don't be palmed off with it's just a thing that you're going through, you'll get better. If people are really displaying serious issues, it's down to the people for duty and care that they come a little bit more into the life of the family and try to help, is my feeling. And we just did not get that at all. And I want that for other people now. Even if when I have a friend who's not returning calls and in a dark place, I drive my arse round there. I drive my bottom round there to see how they're doing, and open the front door. And if they're in their pajamas and they haven't gone out, let's just sit and chat. We don't even have to chat about how you're feeling. Let's just chat. I'm here for you.
FYI, it's a very, very pro-swearing podcast, Shirley.
Is it? Okay.
Yes,
well, I've got my
worries.
staff around there to check on them and see how they were doing. And I like to feel that I've often been there for people in their darkest times. And even on my social media, people say, well, you shouldn't read it. Well, you know what? I should. Because sometimes in my inbox, I go where it says block, delete, accept. I don't ever accept people if they're being super mean about me sending somebody home on Strictly. But sometimes there's a person on there often reaching out, and then I accept, and then I point them in the direction of where they can get help. And I'm not a counsellor, so they ask me questions. I say, I can't answer those questions for you, but I can direct you to people that can answer them for you. So that's why it's very important for me to use my social media also as a platform for people who want to reach out. Because it's really bizarre, really. I think people see me on a Saturday evening on television. They think they know me. I become their doctor, you know. They're like, oh, I
Yeah.
know that lady. I see her on my telly. That's a safe place. Rather than me going to the hospital or the doctor, I'm going to reach out to Shirley. And that part I love. And then I'm able to direct so many people to the right channels. And that's where this job has given me this safe platform in many ways to help other people. A platform I never had.
I think it's really strange. I had a lot of people contact me if they'd been to watch my show, and they'd message on social media afterwards and be like, "This happened to me this long ago," and this, and I think it's because a doctor can seem quite terrifying, or like the thought of going to counselling or therapy or something. But as soon as it's just another person, they go, "Oh, that person seems quite secure, and I can just talk to them, and maybe they'll." That personal connection almost for them feels quite strong, and it's, I mean, if
Don't
as long as you're strong enough to deal with it at that point.
don't you think, Isabel, though, what I'm also learning is when I come into contact with so many different people, the
Yeah,
amount of people who've had
yeah,
friends, cousins, families, somebody they know take their
yeah,
own life, it's been shocking. It's been a
yeah,
revelation for me because
yeah.
I think, I'm the only one that's suffering. There are
Mm,
hundreds of thousands of people that have been touched by suicide. And although campaigns are growing, I don't think they're growing fast enough because I still
no,
think there is stigma surrounding suicide. Like, not many people will say to me, "Tell us about your brother. What kind of character was your brother?" They'd rather
yeah,
avoid the subject, talk about something else. When
Mm.
in actual fact, it's okay to still talk about them. He had 44 years on this planet, my brother,
yeah,
doing good things. And I just think it's important that people understand it's not a taboo subject. Let's bring it into the
yeah,
light. There are a lot more people suffering than we can even possibly imagine.
yeah. And I think we've spoken a bit about how the charity is called Suicide&Co, and it puts the word front and center. And people, I can watch people be a little bit like awkward when I say, "Oh, I've got a podcast and it's about suicide loss," and people are like, "Oh God," and I'm like, "It's fine. Like, don't. Like, my cousin died by suicide, nearly 8 years ago. This is why I do this, because if we don't talk about it, I think my darkest moments that I've had have been when I've been quiet and kept like all of those things secret. So for me to be able to bring my thoughts out to the front and platform them and be open about them. And I feel like you're saying you've used your platform to almost showcase your vulnerability, like the things that you wanted to hide from the press are actually now things that you're like, here, they're here, and I'm advocating for them. A cancer charity, two suicide charities, and I think that shows immense strength, particularly with
Well,
our
I think
press.
if I don't form my own narrative, the press will
Mm,
form theirs. So I think
yeah,
it's important that narrative has to be out there. And just going back to what you just said, of course, I was at Suicide&Co this weekend at Olympia. I was talking there, and they had a stand. And the amount of people who were walking towards the stand and did a U-turn the minute they see that word. So I went behind the back of the counter with the raffle tickets and I said, "Come and buy a raffle ticket. Help us with the suicide campaign." And people will come
yeah,
over because they want to meet you and they'll buy a ticket. But I actually think people approach it like it's a huge fire. Avert, move to a different aisle. When in actual fact, if they would just have the courage to know that we're trying to do good for them and approach and chat and talk is a beautiful thing. But I did notice that people would say, "Would you like?" "No, no, 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 no." Or you can see that heaviness in the being of the body, and you wonder what have they suffered in their life.
mm, yeah,
Mm. You mentioned, Shirley, that through the advocacy work you've spoken to a lot of people and heard their stories, and I know both me and Isabel get the same a lot, and it is really lovely because it just shows in the real world that you're actually creating, you're really knocking down barriers, not just physical barriers for people in the real world, but actually sort of internal barriers that people have that stop them talking about this with other people. And it's always nice hearing stories from people but it does come with a lot of challenges in itself. Particularly because we're all coming from a place of our personal experience. Have you how have you managed to look after yourself in all of this? I know you mentioned that you're sort of constantly learning, and I find the same. Like, the more you do in this space, the more you speak to people, the more you learn about your own grief. But how have you managed to look after yourself whilst doing the advocacy work? Obviously, it must bring a lot of purpose and fulfillment itself, but it's not without its own challenges, right?
Well, every time I have to talk to somebody or do a podcast, I relive every moment of that night as if it was
Yeah.
yesterday.
Mm.
So it never goes away for me. I mean, maybe it gets a little bit lighter and you can compartmentalize. That means you can move it over for a while you're doing another project, but it's always there. And that was the hardest thing at the beginning, was I had to realize that every time I choose to talk about it, I'm going to relive my own trauma,
Yeah.
so to speak. And I got myself in a little bit of a pickle for a minute there with Calm, because I wanted to be there for people like all the time. But what I'm realizing through Suicide&Co is I can direct people in the right direction. I can give some words of advice. I can be there for people, but then that's kind of my job done. I don't have to
Yeah.
carry that job home with me, because that's what I was doing. I was reliving everybody else's pain.
Mm.
And
And it's sorry, go on, Isabel.
I think it's I I don't know if it's indicative. Like, I'm not a politician or a doctor or anything, but like, it are people coming to, your inbox, or our inboxes, is that because they're not able to get to a doctor, or that we've talked quite a bit about advocating for your own, for support and things, and for mental health support post suicide loss. But is it just that people don't know where to go to, or is it just that we feel more comfortable? I'm not sure
I think
what the answer is.
I think people don't know really where to go in the big scheme of things.
Yeah.
And just going back to Ben, how I deal with it, I wouldn't say I deal with anything very, very well when it comes to suicide. I have to read a lot. I have to do my meditation, my yoga, find a few things that I can do for myself that take me into a zone. Like if I'm on my walking machine or running or something, it just takes me away for an hour of the day. But like I say, my brother is constantly on my mind 24/7. So how do you deal with it? Each person is different. I have
Yeah.
my mother, she lives with me, so I have to be joyous even if I'm feeling sad. Like the other day, she was having a moment because of some other suicide situations that were going on, and she wanted to find a little picture of her son when he was a baby. So we found it in the attic, and Harry blew it up. My PA Harry blew it up, and I just caught her standing there for like 10 minutes staring at it. So then I think to myself, okay, that's long enough now in my mind.
Yeah.
And then I go give her a cuddle. Okay, let's talk about those times. Tell me about those times when he was in the pram. So
Yeah.
I, for me, it's difficult because I have my mum, and it was her son. It was her son. My brother, we were just the three musketeers. There was only the three of us. So dealing with it for me, back to Ben's question, is an ongoing. And to go
Yeah.
back to your question, Isabella, about can they get to the doctor? I feel that people don't want to bother people. I find people
Yeah.
don't want to bother people, and they're wondering whether it's just an issue for themselves. So they try to internally cope, have an internal coping mechanism. But sometimes by reaching out, we can give a little bit more to somebody else and they can help us. So it's the
Yeah.
reaching out, whether it's a doctor, whether it's a friend, whether it's to CALM, Suicide&Co, the Samaritans, or whatever good charity is out there. Reach out is the thing I say to people. We're in a
Yeah.
world now on social media where people talk all like got their mouths going 10 pennies a minute, particularly on Strictly Come Dancing. Everybody loves their opinion. So, you know, reach out in the same way. If you're feeling low,
Mm.
Yeah.
reach out. We'll help.
Yeah. And so you first were an ambassador for Calm, and did you get in touch with them, or did they get in touch with you?
I think in 2000, I was already aware of CALM. It was on my
Yeah.
radar. And in 2018 when I climbed Kilimanjaro for comic relief. Then CALM was very much in the forefront of my mind, and I did some quiz shows which I donated the money to CALM. And then, of course, I became an ambassador in 2022. So I think we kind of found each other, really. I needed to find something for me. And then, really, when I would join CALM, I realized it was trying to help people help themselves when they were in low places. But Suicide&Co, I think I found that for me. I think
Yeah.
I needed that support system. And of course, sharing with other families, but sometimes you need something for you. And now, when I have people threatening to take their own life, or am in situations where people have taken their own life, I can go to them and they give me great advice.
It's amazing. Because it's interesting, isn't it, that when a family goes through loss by suicide, it's so funny because it's so common. It is so common. Like, this happens to so many families around the world every year, but it's such a difficult thing to talk about or find resources about or find information about. And you mentioned a great example there of how difficult this is for families, where you do have people dealing with it very differently, and then sort of, having to look after your mum and her having slightly different needs to you, and that's a really difficult situation to be in. So that's what certainly led me to work with Suicide&Co. I'm sure from the sounds of it was what led you to work with them as well, because actually, providing that support to people and some advice on their actual situations is so amazing. And all the work you do with CALM. I mean, you did a wing walk, is that right? On a plane at one
I
point?
did a wing walk on a plane. They tied me to the plane and it was
Yep.
going up and down. I thought we were going to shave the sheep. We went so
Oh
low.
my
And then I
God.
did
That
the
is,
zip wire in the world, 120 miles an hour, 63. And then jumped out the aeroplane at 18,000 feet with a 2,000-foot free fall, all in the space of 4 days.
oh my
Raised, how much
goodness.
did I raise, Harry? I raised over £60,000 myself for that charity.
Yeah,
That's
And I
incredible.
was
amazing.
quite proud of myself because
Amazing.
I don't like heights. So it was,
Yeah, that's a hard
but
one,
I was proud to do
60,000.
it. It took me out of my comfort zone. And I
Yeah.
knew originally when we spoke to CALM, they talked about, oh, well, we could cut grass or we could bake cakes or we could do it. I thought, that's not going to get pick up in the newspaper. But if you
Yeah.
strap me to an aeroplane or a prop plane and I'm zoom, 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 you'll get pick up. And it did on every channel. So when
Yeah.
I'm working for a charity, my angle always comes is, how do I use the platform to get on the
Mm.
national television? Not for myself, but for the charities, because we need that on
Mm.
the news. Somebody said, what if there's an accident or something like that? I said, well, there you go. That was my time to go make great news. It would open up the charity, as bizarre as that sounds.
Yeah.
So I'm always trying to do
Yeah.
something that can get pick up to help the people out there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, just shows you as well with that way you're thinking, but also, like you said, imagine, I mean, being scared of heights and doing an 18,000-foot parachute jump and then tying yourself to a plane and getting over that fear of heights. Just, I guess, shows you and shows everyone how much this all means to you, and the power that you have behind you at wanting to push this forward is enough to overcome that fear and really push it to one side, which I think is an incredible thing, and just shows you how much emotion and feeling and power you have behind you here.
Well, I can give
Yeah.
you one funny story from that day. And that was when I was in
Mm.
the aeroplane and we were about to go out and I was strapped to another person, this huge chap. We were in this one sort of like seat belt, the two of us. And I just turned to him and I go, I really don't think I can do this. It's quite terrifying if you've never done anything like that before. And he said to me, there's
Yeah.
only one way you're going. It's out that owl. And with that, it was gone. I mean, but he was so experienced. I got a really experienced guy, and he told me before I went up, nobody's died on my watch, Shirley. I was like, oh my God. But proud of myself for being able to take myself,
Yeah.
at my age and I will continue to do that. I will continue to do things that are put in front of me. I won't let age stop that for while ever I can raise awareness for these charities, I'm going to do that.
Yeah. And can I ask, so before you worked with CALM and Suicide&Co, and probably before you were on Strictly, did you do any advocacy work, or did you have any outlet for it? I feel like you feel so strongly about these things, and I just wondered if there just wasn't that focus before.
I did it on my birthday, on my 50th birthday, raising funds
Yeah,
for a charity out in California. I did that,
yeah,
but it wasn't something my mum was comfortable with. Like I said, and in
really,
2017, 2018, with all the awful press, people selling stories and what have you, um,
yeah,
we decided that we wouldn't take the job back in 2018. But then it was my son's idea, let's really open the platforms you love
yeah,
to do and help people. Let's use it for the platform. So I love my job on a Saturday and I'm truly grateful. But the idea really is to do at least 30 to 40% at my age now, charity work and
mm,
help where we can. And
yeah.
yeah, I love it actually. I really enjoy it.
Was your mum not comfortable because of the stigma around suicide, or just the publicness of it?
Both the stigma around
Both, yeah,
suicide, the fact it's private to her, and
yeah,
people want to always talk about the story. I mean, it wasn't even worded nice, and she's the one who's got
yeah,
to open up to those newspapers and read them. So I do,
yeah,
in a way, try to protect her. And now, of course, there's nicer ways of saying things and careful how you
yeah,
word things. I'm careful how I word things around her.
yeah,
So I want to always take care of my mum's well-being, and I think Suicide&Co. If you've got a family of four, three may be handling it reasonably well, and one may be struggling. So a family can come together to talk to Suicide&Co. to help each other, as my mum
mm,
and I have done.
That's amazing. In terms of Suicide and Co, then, and like I said, you're such a massive advocate and ambassador for the charity. It's you clearly have so much belief in this and this charity. When you lost your brother, what was there in terms of the support that you received, if anything? In 2003, I can't imagine the conversation had got very far, and suicide was still heavily stigmatized back then, and
mm.
we've made progress since then, but not a huge amount. What was the support that you received at that time like?
Zero. Not even from the
Yeah.
doctor, not from anybody. Zero. I can say that with my hand on my heart. And my mother struggled to such an extent that I had to pay for counselling to my own counsellor that I was going to at the time for my everyday things. He wasn't a special bereavement counsellor. And
Yeah,
we went in and talked to him and for a couple of hours. But there was nobody at all. No one reached
mm,
out after he passed. Nobody called to check in on how the family was doing.
Mm.
Nobody, nothing,
yeah,
not a phone call,
Wow.
not even from his GP, not even from the man who'd come round to give him the pills or whatever. Nothing, nothing at
Mm.
all.
mm,
Wow. Wow. When was the first time you realized that actually, because obviously now you've said you sort of you learn about this and you're working on your own grief and all of this, but when was the first moment that you really realized that you needed support here and actually you deserved support and you wanted to reach out and talk to people about this? When how did that happen? Because that can't have happened easily, and you must have had to work really hard at that.
Well, my son saw me struggling for many, many years, and obviously I think he was 15. Harry, was David 15? Mark
I
15
think
when David
he
died.
was 17, because I think he's born the same year as me.
Yeah, he was a
Yeah,
teenager, and I think he watched me struggle with his nan for many, many years, and I
Mm.
think that's why he calls us still to this day, every single day, every single day. It's very rarely that Mark doesn't call from the US, FaceTime to see
Mm.
how we're doing. And
mm,
like I say, when I turned 50, it was his idea about joining that suicide group, of which I went on different walks and I helped them, but it only really became very significant when I joined Strictly Come Dancing to
Mm.
find a charity that I felt that I could support, and that in return I would also get some relief from the baggage I was carrying, the blame game, as we all do. What if,
yeah,
what if, what if? I shouldn't have done this. Well, my mum, it's my fault. No, well, it was my fault because without me, you wouldn't have gone to London, and just a series of things, but without blaming each other because we each have our own price to pay. No one can take that away. Not anyone who says he was going to do it anyway. We're going to live with that. But she chooses to have the way she deals with it. I choose to have the way I deal with it. But we never blame each other, for sure. We don't do that. But the real help came for me when I became an ambassador for CALM. I felt a sense of relief that I was helping, and now when I've joined Suicide&Co, the Families Left Behind, I feel like I can go to them and sort of ask questions and even relive from 20 years ago things that I've carried for many, many years. But it is like carrying something on your back, and sometimes you just want to put that rucksack down for a minute so you feel lighter and more airy. And then sometimes I feel I just need to put it back on again because that's what I deserve. So it's constantly, I'll think I'll go to my grave taking some of that responsibility for his death.
Yeah. I think that this is such a narrative that we hear, like we've heard on the podcast, I've seen and spoken to friends about and stuff, and I've definitely felt quite strongly. And I think obviously I'm kind of one step removed because it was my cousin rather than my brother, and I think that sense of that sibling loss is huge for both of you, that I guess I'm slightly removed from. But it's really funny that I had quite a lot of bereavement counselling, and I specifically had like quite long conversations about blame with my counsellor, and about guilt and about shame as well. And I wonder how, because I feel like that people immediately say to me, I say, you feel a lot of guilt and blame for it, and people go, oh no, but you shouldn't. You're like, well, it comes from somewhere so deep in my body, and I actually don't hear that spoken about, apart from like within suicide circles sounds like an awful thing. Within like advocacy circles, you don't really hear about that, I don't think. There's not a mainstream narrative about about this. There's no, I don't feel like anyone's really talked about it. Maybe Roman Kemp in his documentary, but
20 years deep-seated in your whole being of your body. And if you get into those places, like David's anniversary is coming up now, December, and this was the time that he was poorly from the beginning of November up until he took his own life. So the minute we come to the 1st of November, although my grandson was born in November, so there's a little bit of relief and joy there, but it's still this whole run-up to that actual day was when we were on the phone every day, and oh, you'll be fine. People pat me, oh, don't worry, Shirley, you'll be fine. I know how you feel. Well, you know what? You don't know how I feel because you've never lost somebody into such tragic circumstances. You can't possibly know how somebody's truly, you can have empathy for somebody, but you don't know how I'm feeling because you've never had it happen to you. So that little quick pat on the back and get over yourself, you'll be fine, just doesn't work for me.
I think also I spoke to Carrie Lloyd about this on the Griefcast, but I think there's quite a lot of like muscle memory of how, as the season changes, you kind of almost remember like the difference in where the sun sits in the sky and how your body is reacting to like the seasonal winter change. Ben and I both lost our people in January, and I find as soon as it gets to January the 2nd or 3rd, I'm in like, oh, this is Jen season, and like oddly, my baby's due on the same day as her anniversary, which I find absolutely, I hate it. It's obscene, but I'm trying to reconcile how I'll find, if she comes around that time, like how I'll reconcile that lightness and darkness that I feel at that time at the same time, in future years.
You'll find a way, because maybe that's a beautiful way of remembering your cousin, you know what I'm saying? Maybe I believe in fate a lot of the time, and I believe in things are meant to be what they're meant to be. Even with my grandparents, they died 3 years apart on the same day at the same time.
Really?
My mum.
Wow.
Yeah. So all sorts of things happen within the life, and some great joy will come from it somewhere down the line. So I think looking at the positive of it is good, you know. But I agree with you that it comes like an overextended ring on the doorbell. Triggers. It triggers me back. Or if I have police knock on the door, or somebody else has an issue with it, then they're all triggers. So there's no escaping it. It's always going to be there, particularly if you're super close. My brother was my father, he was my brother, he was my friend, he was my go-to, he was my strength, he was the person who protected me from bullying, he was all of that. He took care of me from a very young age when my mother was going to work all the time. He was the one that if he saw me hanging around the house in a state, I'd see him legging it in his bother boots and I'd run home, because he used to say to me, "You're going to be a dancer and one day I'm going to be very proud of you." You know, so there are so many things in so many aspects of life where he is all the time. So I just try now at 64 to embrace that. I just try to, where would we be if he was still here today is another thought. And he left a daughter, beautiful daughter. She just turned 30, and her mother found him, you know, in the house, in awful circumstances, and then she died of alcoholism. So Mary not only lost her dad to suicide, but her mother to alcoholism. And out of that has turned the most cherished child. We've raised her from 10, my mum and I. Never given us a day's problem in her life. Suffers with Crohn's. You know, when her dad's birthday's coming, she gets very emotional, but she's found a really good man in her life. And we've been that support system for her. And in return, she doesn't realise what she's done for us, because every time you look at that child's face, it's like looking at my brother. She's so like her father in so many ways. And so I guess with Mary, Mark, my mum and myself, we've managed to navigate through stormy waters to a little bit more calm. And I know that they're all proud of the work, whatever work I can do towards the mission that we're on, to get this word out to people. Reach out. Don't suffer alone.
So powerful. Honestly, it's just absolutely amazing everything that you've done for this, and how hard you're pushing for the stigma. It's just so unfair to me that the stigma exists. It's just so unfair that you've had to spend 20 years fighting this stigma inside yourself and around the world, and then it seems so unfair that this all happens, and the destruction that all causes because people face that stigma, and it's just so unfair. And I've listening to you, it's just inspiring, because it reminds us of why we're doing this work, and like we can make so much change here. It's so possible to make change, because if simple things are different, if I think back to Sam's story, if simple things had been slightly different, then the whole thing could have been changed. And I'm like you, I can't think about that too much, because I think it's really, really sad if you think about it too much. But there's so much potential to change those simple things for other people out there that would have helped Sam, and it's genuinely really inspiring to hear you, because you could have just not done this and pushed it away and not wanted to talk about it and sort of let the papers talk about what they wanted to and continued and with what you were doing. But the fact that you stepped forwards and did this and talked about it and actually put a spotlight on the fact that things can be different, and we should all be utterly ashamed of the world we live in that does stigmatize it so much. It's frankly, it's just amazing. So I genuinely from
just on another note, Ben, also sorry to interrupt you there, but on another note was, I work in an industry that's full of people. It's not like I had a 9 till 5 job. I could go in the office and have my feelings to myself and just type on a typewriter and then go home at 5 o'clock. I've never had that kind of job from 16. Mine's been a job of going into a studio with 17 other teachers in there, and couples coming in all the time for their private lessons, and even going back to work after taking a month off over David was very, very difficult for me. And at first I wasn't handling that very well, going to work. I didn't want to see people's happy faces. because I wasn't happy. I didn't want to see their happy faces. And my mother grabbed me. I'll never forget the day she grabbed me by the arm and she said to me, "Now you listen here, young lady." She said, "When you go into work and those people are paying for the lesson, you hang your problem at the door, you pick it up on the way out." And that's where that red button came from. Lights, camera, action. I'm here at work. So they didn't deserve to have a miserable teacher. So I had to reinvent myself, rethink about how I navigated being around young people that come in for their private lesson all joyous when I'm in the darkest place of my life.
Yeah.
So it was also difficult. So people generally after a suicide have to go back to work. That's hard to deal with. Reach out, we'll help you with that. Find a system that you can sort of like not switch off, you never kind of fully switch off, but how are you going to handle going back to work? People don't talk about that. That's not easy to do. You want to sit on your sofa with a quilt over you and eat 25 packets of Doritos and drink a can of Coke. That's in the place that you feel that you want to be. But that's also not going to serve anything or anybody.
Yeah. I found
So
I had a normal job back then, and I did comedy in the evenings, and I had a normal job in an office. And my boss was like, "Look, if you want to work from home, just stay at home." And I did 2 days at home, and I just found, I think because I'm an extrovert, I actually found it really hard just to be in the house. I just felt like my feelings were just bouncing off the walls and coming back in again. And I was like, I've got to get out. I can't be on my own. But also really struggled with being, and I had to take a time off comedy. I could not put a brave face on, and I think it's because I was writing as well. And when you're trying to write something funny and your head's like just it's so dark that you can't turn a punchline. And so I really struggled balancing, because if I don't do comedy, then the day job felt quite bleak. So I was really like, okay, and now I just do admin. That's awful. But I think it took me about 9 months to be like, right, you've got to pull yourself out the hole a little bit. You know.
Wow.
I found that.
Yeah.
I went to school the next day.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Sam died, and I was still at school, obviously, and everyone was just coming round and giving us hugs, and I remember it got to about 4, and I went to school, and I just sort of skipped into school. Hey everyone, how's everyone doing? And they must have thought it was some sick joke. But I was just I was desperate to get out of the house. I was desperate to be amongst other people. I was desperate for a laugh and to have fun. And everyone thought it was so strange, but I was like, it was my way of just completely distracting myself from what was going on. I was just like, I would reject it. I'm in complete denial. I don't want that to happen. And the way I'm going to prove that it didn't happen is just get in my car and I'm just going to drive to school and weird everyone out, but but just go in and laugh. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because like Isabel said, it's really difficult being at home because you're faced with your own thoughts, and that's really scary sometimes and difficult. But then you also find it difficult to be happy and around other people. And so it's this constant thing of the grass is always greener. Like I was with other people and then I'm going, oh, I really want some space to myself now. And then I was on my own and I'd be like, oh, I really want to laugh. I really want to just have some normal back. And it's a really weird time of your life where you're just constantly not feeling 100% wherever you are. And it's really confusing as well. Like nothing really makes sense because no one tells us about grief. No one ever goes, this is what's going to happen. This is how it's going to go. This is some of the normal feelings that might come. No one does that. So you're left sort of wandering through, finding out as you find out. And that's really disorientating.
I think I'm also really interested about you saying with that, like the red button, lights, camera, action, and you're on, and like having that face on. And I think it's more marked for performers because there's almost a gear shift. You go like that process of when you're filming of like, okay, yeah, we've got sound rolling, this, okay, and off we go. And you just also automatically put that smile on your face. And I feel like people do that in everyday life, but just you don't feel it in the same way. Like that, take a deep breath when you walk into work and you've got to just put on a brave face for the day, even though you're feeling awful. And I'm really interested in in how people manage that and what effect that has on us long term. And I think it's inherently British as well, because we never talk about feelings. You'd never come out with, if someone says how are you, just say you're fine. Like that's how it goes. And I think that contributes to the stigma, and it contributes to this thing where we end up with long term grief that we don't deal with, and it's heightened with a suicide loss.
I'm interested, Shirley, in that because, like we've mentioned, all of us have the anniversaries of the people we've lost, their death are all around the same time of year. And I don't know about you, and forgive me if this is a bit intrusive or difficult question to answer, but I really struggle with Christmas. There's something about and I know so many people that have lost people, particularly at this time of year, all feel the same way. But I really struggle with Christmas and the sort of TV ads of like the perfect family and the sort of happiness of it all, when you're going through something difficult. Is that something that you've had to deal with? I mean, is it a time of year that obviously in your work, it's a time of year where you're right, the red light comes on and it's sort of, Christmassy and fun, but it must bring with it its own difficulty as well.
Well, from 2003 when he died up until about 2018, we never put a tree up. We didn't celebrate it at all.
Really?
Even to this day, if my mum can get away without putting up Christmas tree or baubles, she will. So it was only when I met my boyfriend Danny that in 2018 that he brought us a little tree, and from there it blossomed, and we started to celebrate Christmas a little bit more over the past few years. But it's very small. It's always just Mary, my mum, myself, and the dog. Or if my son comes over every other year with my son, it's not a big thing. It's not over celebratory at all, because he died in December. The whole of December is
Yeah.
a shot month for us. It's not a month we look forward to. We don't like the reminders. We've tried different ways over the years to overcome that, but no. And Mum
Mm.
always cooks a nice dinner, and we always watch the same show every year. Her and I'll snuggle up and watch the same show. We have our little
Mm.
dinner, just the two of us, and then we do whatever we're going to do. But no, we don't. It was just such a time for the three of us that it just doesn't sit. And we always set a place for him. There's always a place set for him at Christmas
Mm.
on the table as if he's there. She wants to do that, so that's what we do. And we watch the movies we watched as kids, You Sound of Music, Oliver, all those things. And but
Yeah.
it is what it is. So, and my whole thing is respecting my mother's wishes. I put mine second to her feelings because it was her son.
Mm.
Mm. It's amazing how you sort of you go through that and you have to sort of build your own traditions and find something from
Yeah.
it, or just try and find those little moments of happiness, even if it's the whole 3 4 whatever how many other days they want us to be celebrating for, even if you can find a couple of nice moments where in amongst a really dark time of year for all of you, find those nice little moments. That's what you sort of latch onto, and it sounds like you've found those things. I know a lot of people struggle with finding those, and watching the old movies and almost feeling like you're connected through time by doing that sort of stuff can be really helpful. I know a lot of people do something similar. um I'm just interested, but we're running out of time. We've got to sort of wrap up the episode, but really interested here. This is a bit of a cliched question, but if you could talk to Shirley in 2003,
Mm.
after this has all happened, with everything you've learned over the last 21 years, in terms of what you've done in terms of advocacy, in terms of your own personal growth and your own journey, in terms of your knowledge growth, what would you say to Shirley in 2003?
Well, first of all, if I knew then what I know now, I would, because we live 6 hours apart, so I would get in the car, I would go up there and see for myself, not go off what my mum was saying, but see for myself the situation and weigh it up, and then realize straight away we need some help here. This is bigger than my mum and I. And I would be a lot more drop what I was doing, because I lived a busy life. I had 2 foster children and my own child at the time and a husband. And we were just so wrapped up in our own lives that we didn't take a step back. I would want to take a step back, be on a lone cliff and look down into the life and see, this is going wrong, that's going wrong, stop what you're doing, this needs attention. But I didn't. I just kept rolling the same camera, doing the same thing, doing my life, talking to him on the phone. Come on, Dave, you'll be fine, you'll be fine. Well, you know what? He wasn't fine. And nobody was telling me to the contrary. So I like to see things out for myself. So when I know somebody's struggling, I like to go around to their house face to face and start to have a little bit more of a move all my stuff out and see what I can feel. What do I feel in this situation? What's actually going on with you? You know, what's going on with your day? Why aren't you going to work, or things like that? And I would just like to take a complete step back and look back in, because I truly believed, if I knew then what I know now, I honestly believe in my heart he'd be with me today. I do. I believe it was a soul that could have been saved. We just didn't have anybody saying the right words, talking the right things. We had no reassurance, no outside help. I didn't know at the time it was as bad as it was. I wouldn't have known where to go. I would not have known where to go. Only the GP. And my mum the same. There just wasn't anything. So I just think that the more messages that we can get out, and the more that we all choose to share our stories, our paths, our journeys, don't be embarrassed about it, because we're sharing amongst each other. Well, and that's what's wonderful about Suicide&Co. People that are in there have lost somebody to suicide. So we all understand each other. It's not somebody who hasn't had that experience. And yeah, I'd love to be able to go back to that day. I really would. I would love to have gone back and said, okay, Corky, you need to take care of the kids. I'm off. I need to sort my brother out. But I didn't know enough, wasn't experienced enough. Now I know signs. I can telltale signs from messages, from how I am around people, or if I go into work and somebody's having an off day, boy, oh boy, am I tuned into that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's devastating, isn't it? Having to think in terms of the what ifs. They can be all consuming, those thoughts, and rightly so, because it's really powerful, painful things that you have to think about. We're running out of time, but I know we've done an episode on guilt and shame, and it's something that I've felt so deeply for so many years. And I remember a really amazing conversation I had with a counsellor I had at the time, who said, we're only ever allowed to feel guilt about things we did on purpose. And she went through my story, and she was just like, you never went out of your way to do this. You never tried to do this. This wasn't something you wanted. So the guilt you're feeling is unhealthy, not unhealthy, but unhelpful guilt. Because, you know, guilt is helpful when we've done something wrong and we can learn from it. But when we haven't done something on purpose, then it's unfair to hold ourselves responsible. And I think so many people that lose people to suicide, me included, really, really struggle with those what ifs and that shame. Yeah. But I look back at my story. I didn't want Sam to die. I had no idea what I was meant to do to help. And so that guilt and shame that I feel is just, it's unfair that I have to feel it. But you're right. Then we package it up and we put it back together. We pick ourselves up and we go, well, you know what? If we can teach someone else what they could have done, if I think about what I need to do and we can let someone else do that, what a powerful, powerful thing to do. And look, there you are. You're doing exactly that. And it is just incredible that we can do this. It's really amazing.
I think what you're doing is absolutely amazing, and I think you should be incredibly proud of yourself, Shirley.
Thank you. Thank you. It's hard. I'm not gonna lie. I show you this little picture I have of him on my wall. There he is, the fisherman that he was, you know. So I have him in my office, I have him in my room, I have him all over the house, remembering just how proud of me he was. Yeah. So he's still part of that.
I think he'd be so proud of you. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Shirley. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and hearing you talk so candidly about a subject that clearly means so much to you. So thank you so much for your time. It's been really, really lovely chatting to you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you. Means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, and sending you a huge
No,
amount of love
honestly,
for a difficult month as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Thanks so much for listening. Conversations and Company would like to thank Acast, our wonderful guests, and all of you listeners. Thank you for your generous support. Please rate, review, and subscribe, or send a link to someone who might need it. Remember, you can go to our website to check out the various support services available through Suicide&Co. We'll be back with another episode soon.